Now to the remarkable effort by the small island nation of Cuba to produce its own COVID-19 vaccine. As large and wealthy countries both produce and consume the majority of vaccines around the world, Cuba is working to develop its own solution for its population, with 5 vaccine candidates now in development. Our Bob Woodruff has the story in this week's Vaccine Watch.
Just 100 miles away from the Florida coast, a tiny country once crippled by its dictatorship government is now one step closer to distributing its own COVID-19 vaccines, apparently with no help from the outside world. In fact, they're developing 5 vaccines.
This is an underdog story. And, all signs have been pointing to the fact that these vaccines are very promising.
2 of them approved for phase 3 trials just last month.
The vaccine has a good safety profile, since there have been no serious adverse events.
The vaccines have not completed final testing, but the Cuban government hopes to begin distributing those 2 vaccines starting in May, each requiring 2 to 3 doses.
Once we have those results, we will be ready to authorize the mass use of the vaccine in Cuba. Thus, we are already at the door of the last phase of these clinical trials.
Cuba is an isolated island nation, unique amongst its neighbors in Latin America.
Cuba has a long history of investment in health, especially primary health care. It's largely a medical model. They station doctors all over the world for many decades now. And they also have a long history of vaccine development, especially for the childhood vaccines that we all are familiar with: measles, pertussis, tetanus, etc.
While other neighbors in the region are buying COVID-19 vaccines from countries like Russia, China, and India, Cuba has decided to go it alone.
If it is good and if it is approved for emergency use or any type of registration authorization, then we would consider a massive vaccination plan for the population.
Would it be a broad intervention of Havana?
Very broad. We are talking about 1.7 million people.
All people between 19 and 80 years old.
Cuba has been under harsh sanctions by the United States for the past 60 years, and the country is still an authoritarian state with issues with human rights and free speech. In response to its isolation, it built up its domestic biotech industry.
Given the blockade that we are subjected to and the situation in the country, it would have been very difficult for us to get the results that we are getting in the fight against the pandemic if we had not developed this industry more than 35 years ago in our country.
Cuba is a place that's full of paradox in many ways. Cuba, at the same time that they're making these, pretty remarkable strides toward vaccine development, Cuba is also in the midst of its worst economic crisis in 30 years.
For the most part, Cuba has been able to control the spread of COVID-19, but today Cuba is going through their worst outbreak yet, with an average of over 800 infections a day.
We are getting closer to the moment of carrying out a massive vaccination of the population. This news has arrived at this moment when we are facing the outbreak that has been the hardest for us to control and confront.
The global disparity in vaccine distribution is stark. More than half of the vaccinations around the world have been administered in just 4 countries: the United States, India, China, and the UK. And 2 of those countries, the US and the UK, have bought 20% of all the vaccines being sold around the world, although China and India have not publicly announced how many doses they've bought.
The problem is, if you look at the global landscape, only about 3% of the global population is fully vaccinated. And that poses problems. If the virus is allowed to proliferate unchecked, we know now that new variants will develop, and that could have consequences for us down the road.
For a low-income country like Cuba, creating an effective vaccine of their own could provide a boost for Cubans, both medically and financially. With the Cuban vaccines, they don't need to join the long line of countries bartering for doses, and they may eventually be able to sell their vaccines to others, or even promote vaccine tourism to their shores.
Our country is saving money, and it could save many millions of dollars given the results that we have achieved.
Health officials in Cuba say they're confident and that their results to date have been promising. And to Cubans, getting the first doses, access to any vaccine, is a big relief.
I'm a little nervous, but calm. proud to be able to receive the vaccine after such a long time.
So, certainly as a scientist, as Cubans, we are really very happy at this moment.
The hope now in Cuba is to vaccinate 8 million Cubans by August and the entire population of 11 million by the end of 2021. This is Bob Woodruff, tracking the vaccine.
Thanks to Bob for that.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.